So welcome back to the Youth and Politics podcast. My name is Cody, and today I'm with Councillor. Please introduce yourself.
Cameron
Mm.
Anderson.
Thank you for coming on and giving us your time to hear your views and your story. So if you don't mind telling us a bit about yourself, where you're a councillor for, and why did you get into politics in general?
My name is Cameron Anderson. I ran for local council in Buckinghamshire. My ward is Watermeads, Buckingham Park, and Berryfields. And believe it or not, I know I look ancient. I am 19 years old. So things went very quickly for me, I think, in the last year. Time flew by. I was a member of the Conservative Party about a year and a half ago, and I was a little bit disenfranchised. Well, very disenfranchised, to be honest with you. And I decided to make the shift over to Reform UK, which I think is a much more youth-centered party. We've got a lot of young membership, particularly teenagers that want a brighter and better future for themselves. And I decided to run on May the 1st because I think that something needed to change, to be honest with you. We need a shift in our country so that people feel inspired, optimistic, so that we are a country that wants to strive and not just survive.
Mm.
And that's why I decided to run on May the 1st. I think that's why I resonated with the public and why I was successful on May the 1st. Because there's a lot of people that do feel the same way, that do want change, and people voted for it. And here we are.
Yes, so I mean, very young age as well to be doing what you're doing, and I actually really like that because I feel like we need to get more young people involved,
Absolutely. Yeah, we do.
especially in local councils, because a lot of people think government's just the main thing you need to be involved in, but you can also help locally as well. Um, so like for you in your personal way, why did you stand like as a councillor, if you don't mind?
So I've been campaigning for, obviously, with the
Mm,
Conservatives for a long time, and I go door to door talking to people, hearing their stories, their backgrounds, where they came from, what they want to do, and where they want to go. And one of the things that really bothered me the most is that people aren't optimistic. I want everybody to be optimistic about their future. As a young person who came out of
mm,
sixth form, I briefly went to university and I didn't like it. I didn't like the system. I didn't like how things operated. And I decided, you know what? How can I change this? How can I affect change and help people feel more optimistic about their future? Help them put together a plan or a pathway, give people the tools to succeed. You
mm.
can't hand people the world and,
Yeah.
say, there you go. But you can give them the tools to build something for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think obviously there's a lot of talk about young people right now, obviously with the announcement of votes for 16. And like, what's your take on that?
I mean, to be honest with you, when I was 12 or 13, I dread to say that I think I was a socialist. So I don't really think I would have wanted a young Cameron to have a vote then. But I think it's important for the young people to have a say.
Mm,
But exercising a democratic right at 16, I think, is a very controversial and it's an extremely political thing.
mm,
And the government have introduced this with the hope that young people will vote with the government on certain
yeah,
issues and at
yeah,
certain elections. Now, that isn't liberating young people. That's
mm,
weaponizing young people, in my opinion.
yes,
I do think that that's got malicious intent behind it. And I
mm,
don't think it's something that young people are particularly grateful for because a lot of people,
mm,
they're focused on getting the qualifications, building the future, putting the foundations in to build up from for the next 10 to 20 years,
mm,
whatever it may be. And all of a sudden they've
yeah.
got to exercise their democratic rights. And I think that's a very big pressure to put on young people. I don't think it's fair.
Yes, actually that isn't the first time we've heard that. I think I've spoken to many young people on this podcast before, and like a lot of young people themselves, like 16, 13-year-olds we've had saying that they don't actually want this. So I feel like that speaks a lot of volumes in itself. And then obviously we've got the other half that really do want it and are really campaigning for it. I think there's a mix of like a lot of people are saying education is the one that needs to come out of this. Do you think that is the case?
Well, I think it depends on how. So before the election, obviously, I'm a young person.
Mm.
And because I'm a young person, I want to understand what young people are thinking. I talk to people I work in a pub. I've gone
Yeah.
from pouring pints for hundreds of people to representing over 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So I speak to everybody. And one of the things that I've started doing is I'm trying to visit as many schools across Buckinghamshire as I can.
Mm.
talking to not only the students but the teachers as well about what they care about. It's not about what they want to see in front of them in an exam in
Yeah.
summer at the end of their school time. It's about, when they do leave school, what opportunities do they want to see? How
Mm.
can government or local council support them to give them the tools to succeed?
Yeah, I feel like that is definitely there's different ways of doing it, like you just said. And I feel like schools are now in a point where a lot of schools don't know what to do with this.
Mm.
And they're very confused on how to actually deliver political education. Like I remember being told that my head teacher wouldn't put political education involved because they couldn't give a non-biased teacher.
I mean, it was something that my school struggled with when I was at school. So, for A levels, I did English, literature, business, law, and an extended finance
Mm.
qualification. And I noticed that English was taught from a biased point of view,
Mm.
business was taught from a biased point of view, law was, and finance was.
Yeah.
So, there's always, we can't change human nature.
Mm.
But I think the way that we get around that educational bias is give students a platform to voice their views. We
Yeah.
need to have a bigger emphasis on things like debate society.
Mm.
We need to have county-wide associations which create a debate society, let kids travel around the county, debate
Mm.
with other schools about key topics, give them a voice, give
Yeah.
them a platform to air their concerns where people can listen. They don't need a legal and legislative right to
Mm.
exercise because unfortunately, they're putting together the building blocks for their future.
Mm.
And so I think it's an extra pressure that isn't needed, but we definitely do need to emphasize the rights to kids to have a voice.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And then in your because you're a member or you're a councillor for Reform UK, obviously Reform UK, we did a episode on parties the other day, but Reform UK, we said that was like really pushing for young people, and a lot of young people are actually going to them.
Mm,
Like, I debated with someone on this podcast before that. Someone said it's not right that people are allowed to vote for Reform UK, but then I said, what makes it right for someone to vote for Jeremy Corbyn's new
mm.
party or Labour? And then they actually went back and looked at yeah, it's true. Everyone can vote for who they want. But what is your opinion on what Reform UK is doing with getting more young people involved?
I mean, I think the best way that I can describe this is our flagship policy. So
Mm,
our main flagship policy is increasing the tax threshold, the minimum rate of national insurance, income tax, excuse me, from 12,250 or whatever it is to £20,000.
mm,
Now, when I left school, I still work in a pub, and I'm somewhere in that tax bracket, but I still have to pay tax on that. So, as a school leaver, if you're paying tax on anything over £12,000 a year ish, that's being taxed on just over £1,000 in your bank account every month.
wow.
Now,
Okay.
you may, if depending on what your situation is, you have to pay rent, you have to pay for food bills, utilities, etc.
Mm,
Now, that's not something that young people can afford.
mm,
But our policy on this, our policy on our tax record, is that we want to increase that tax threshold so that young people can afford to leave school, get a
mm,
job, pay their bills, or pay their parents some rent, or put some money aside to save for the future. Or if you're at university and you've got an
mm.
income of which is over that tax threshold, then under a reform government, you wouldn't pay tax on it because the
Yeah.
tax threshold will be increased. That's how we're supporting young people in universities, freshly out of sixth form, anyone that's going on to do a degree apprenticeship or an apprenticeship. That's how we support these people by giving them the economic environment to succeed in. And that's what we will do with a reform government, hopefully in 2029, if not sooner.
Yes, I think there's a lot of topics being raised as well. Like young people are raising. I don't know if you feel the same. That young people feel there's certain topics to them, like for example, housing and stuff like that, that the government don't listen to. And obviously this podcast should raise anyone's opinions and like build them up and share their stories. Um, but do you feel that government right now isn't listening to what young people actually really want? Or
I don't think government is listening to what anyone wants, to be honest with you. I think whatever the public want, the
yeah,
government go and do the opposite. So
yeah,
I think there's a very big national concern at the moment, which is
mm,
government's not working. Now, as a young person, I'm going into politics hoping to make a difference, but at the moment, I'm not filled with confidence that there's government ministers that are going to try and make a positive change for me
mm,
or my friends or the people that I went to school with and the people I'm growing up with. Um, but there's a very big concern at the moment that there's no one representing young people at the moment.
Mm,
And that's where I think this reform surge has come from, is because actually we're providing people with a voice now. We're
mm,
giving people platforms.
yeah.
People running as just, I think it was yesterday, we had an 18-year-old young lady, Sienna something, I can't remember her name, 18
Mm,
years old, elected as a Reform UK councillor. She's only a couple of months younger than me, but she is still, a young
yeah.
person that's got involved
Yeah.
and is going to go for it. And I think that's massively, massively symbolic because finally, I think young people are going to say, "There's hope," and we're optimistic, and that's
Mm.
something I'm very, very proud of.
That's perfect. And then obviously we have a tradition on this podcast that basically we ask every guest to leave a message to any young person interested of getting involved in politics. And what would your message be?
That's a very good question. I think if you see injustices that you think nobody's acting on, speak out against it. You know,
Mm,
always, always say something. You should never feel afraid to speak your mind. We live in one of the freest,
mm,
most
yeah.
intellectually prosperous countries in the world. We've got literature everywhere. We've got platforms for speech everywhere.
Mm,
We are the beacon of freedom and democracy across the planet.
yeah.
If we're afraid to say things here, God forbid how people feel in parts of Africa or the
Yeah.
Middle East or in Asia where there isn't the same principles in regard
Yeah.
to freedom of speech. We have a voice in this country, and our young people should really, really use it and use it to
Mm,
better themselves, their community, their family, and their friends, so that we can make a brighter future, a more prosperous and safer future that we can all enjoy together.
that's perfect. Thank you for coming on and giving us your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you and see you next time.
Thank you.